One of the fixtures in the Woodsmith shop is our Kreg Router Table. It has a large, smooth sliding top, a great fence, a rolling base, and what we've really appreciated is the open metal stand. And that's because you've probably noticed over the years that we've added a few cabinets along the sides to hold some router bits, and then a drawer along the bottom for a lot of the gear that's always necessary when you're working with a router. Now, one of the places where this has kind of fallen down a little bit is in dust collection. It's not uncommon after a routing session to have to clean up quite a bit of dust and chips down below, as well as the floor around it. To solve that problem, Dennis Volz, one of our designers, stepped in.
Thanks, Phil. Before I talk about the specific design on this router cabinet, I'd like to talk a little bit about my philosophy when it comes to dust collection. A lot of woodworkers put a lot of emphasis on eye protection, hearing protection, and protecting their fingers from being cut by blades. But I think that even more important than those things are dust collection, because you can live without an eye or your hearing or a finger and still survive, but you can't live without a set of lungs.
So when we look at this particular router table, how are we translating that philosophy into some practical approaches?
So on the router cabinet, I designed it so that it has a door that opens up, and so you can still have access to the router and inside the cabinet. And in this particular design, you'll probably still get some chips in the bottom of the cabinet. But the most important dust to collect is the stuff that you can't see floating in the air. It gets down past your natural respiratory defenses and affects your lungs. And it's insidious. It builds up over time so that later in life, you are having breathing problems and you have to deal with that.
Yeah, and end up walking around with an oxygen tank.
Right. Some cases you do.
So how do you solve that? What are we doing here? Because I see some openings here on the front.
Okay. So the way I designed this was I put all the openings up high so that they would be close to the source of the dust as possible. So in the front, we have these vanes that are adjustable. You can open them, close them, adjusting them as necessary depending on how big your throat opening is here on the top of the router and how much of the dust is being generated on top of the router table itself. And then in the back, and we'll turn this around in a second and show you, I've attached a duct to the dust collection system that's also high up so that the whole flow of air that goes underneath the table goes right across the bottom of the table and into the dust collection system.
Which I think is an important point, because I think a lot of people, when they think about dust collection at power tools, think about the collection part. Like I've seen a lot of approaches where people will seal off basically all the openings, slap a dust collecting port on the backside and call it good.
That's exactly the wrong thing to do, because you need to have as much air moving through the cabinet as you do going out. So I sized these openings to be about 12.5 square inches, and it so happens that the duct, a 4-inch duct, is about 12.5 square inches.
Okay, so that way you can really fine-tune with those grill openings and whatever the opening is around the router bit to collect all that dust.
Correct, yeah. Right.
Okay, so let's turn this around here
Sure.
and see what it looks like on the backside. And just to reinforce something that I wasn't expecting when we were first talking about this, because I really thought that the dust collector would be at the bottom collecting all those chips, but you're saying it belongs up high.
Well, that would probably do a better job of housekeeping dust collection, which is your chips, but the big chips are not the problem. The small stuff is the problem. So again, as I said before, we want to get that up as high as possible so that it gets as close to the source of the dust as possible and collects all that fine stuff that you don't want floating around in the air and eventually finding its way into your lungs.
Yeah, and you took a really uncomplicated approach with coming up with a fitting for the back here too. I mean, it's pretty easy to find.
It is. These are available at most home centers. It's just a regular furnace heating duct, and we have a source for this in the magazine when the article comes out. But and I also chose this kind because it has a low profile so that you can back the table up against a wall and not have it sticking out so far.
Right, and then you can customize. I mean, it can come out this side or
right, either side, or you could even probably go up and down. But
yeah,
but it doesn't take up much room back there.
Okay, so you can apply some of these same techniques to any router table. I mean, it doesn't have to be like this particular style.
No, and there are even some commercial ones that are out on the market that try and do the same type of thing. But it applies to any enclosed type of cabinet, whether it's a router table or a table saw, anything like that. This principle will work. You just get that collection as close to the source of the dust as possible.
Okay. Well, there you have it, a couple of practical approaches to be able to gather that fine dust that can really cause some health problems. The end result is not only a cleaner shop that's more enjoyable to spend time in, but it's going to be healthier for you in the long run. Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks, Phil.